I am so excited for my guest that is joining on the show today. She is, when I just look at, and I've stalked her a little bit on the internet. So when I just look at her, I see this picture of strength, which I love and is amazing. So I want to introduce you all to Tiffany Huff-Strothers. Tiffany, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, you and I, we were just talking before, like we are in like chill, wrap up, be comfortable. And this is
Yes, the sun is definitely shining here, but it's very misleading because it's
about right. Let's talk. I always like to start with people's why. And you're in the space of helping women reclaim their voices and rebuild their lives. And just talk to me a little bit about your why.
Candace. My why is ultimately an act of obedience. So basically, I didn't necessarily choose this path. This path chose me.
Hmm.
And I have finally gotten to the place where I can fully embrace it. When we are young, we have these grand ideas about how things will be perfect and we'll walk this very pre-planned, pre-orchestrated path that we've determined is going to be best, and then life begins to happen and things start to shift. And so for a very long time I was trying to get back to that plan until I realized that I was on the exact path that I was supposed to be, which ultimately started with something very traumatic happening or some very traumatic things happening in my life. But I realize now on the other side of it that it was definitely part of what was supposed to be for me to become who I am today.
And how powerful is that? Sometimes I talk about just being open to the unexpected
Yes.
and not necessarily, sometimes you see things one way but then don't realize there's such a treasure trove where it sounds like in your case is, wait a second, Tiffany, over here is where you need to be doing what you're doing. Bring your attention over here. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I had to learn that it's okay to climb down from the top of the wrong ladder and start at the bottom of the right ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very challenging lesson to learn, especially when everyone's watching.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about, because you're working primarily with women,
Yes.
right? So just talk to me about even the people, just given your mission of reclaiming your voice and rebuilding your life. What do you see these days with like people that are coming in to get your support? Like, where are they in life?
Most of the time, people are looking to ignore the power of their story and the power of the experiences that they've grown through. They're really looking to get past it and they lack the clarity to see where they're going because they want to dismiss the foundation of their journey, right? And I'm not saying that everybody has to have the like rags to riches story. However, there are pieces of every experience that teach you lessons. There are pieces of every experience that transform your life. And if you're not willing to spend the time processing those things, then it's going to be very challenging for you to move forward. And so, what you find, or what I find with my clients, is that before they come to me or when they come to me, they're in this habitual cycle of setback after setback. And it's mostly triggered by the fact that they aren't willing to step into their full selves. And that's because they don't want to embrace the fullness of their stories and their journey.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. So let's dig in a little bit. So knowing that, and I know your story has got its own twists and turns in there, which has brought you to this point. Let's dig into that a little bit. So I want to know, if this wasn't the path that you thought you were going to be on, what path did you think you were going to be on?
When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an attorney and ultimately become a judge.
Hmm.
And I got to, but I always told myself, like, I had these very detailed plans, and I always said, I'm not going to go to undergrad and major in political science because I'm going to be a working woman and I'm going to get a job while I go to night school or law school at night. So I wanted to major in something that would offer me the opportunity to actually work. not something theoretical like philosophy or political science. And so I majored in communications and professional writing. And when I got to, I think my junior year, maybe, part of my professional writing major required me to take a proposal and grant writing course. And once I took that course and realized how my writing alone could transform people's lives, could transform communities, there was the instructor who was teaching the class said, look out the window, and there was a new building on campus. And she was like, I wrote the grant that funded that building. And so when I saw the power of words and I love to write, I was like, I don't really know if law school is the thing right now. And so I really started to be more intentional and invest more in my writing, which was something I always loved. I can't remember not writing, but also when I was a little girl, there weren't people in my community who were like, I'm an author. There weren't people who were like, I'm going to grow up and be an author. So it wasn't something tangible that I could necessarily see a path to becoming. So yeah, that's really the moment where I see in my own mind that my journey really started to shift.
Now, did you see that you would always be, of course not, if you thought you were going to take the lawyer path, but did you see that you were going to be this just entrepreneurial, completely stand on my own type woman? Did you see that?
Yes and no, because I had that spirit, but again, I had already predetermined in my mind that I was going to go a certain way. Now, perhaps I would have eventually had my own law firm, but I knew that there was something different about me. And I knew that, especially by the time I got to college, that what was traditional was not going to be my thing. So I had the yearning, but I didn't really know how to place it at the time or what it really was.
Okay. Yeah. So you felt that call. That's the thing that I think is always, I always say there's a difference. And I'm very passionate about this. There is very much a difference between people who are, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. Oh, that's going to be great to own my time, all this great stuff, which it is. But words and those people who truly have the heart, the spirit, the persistence, that everything that goes along with it are very different things. And so it's always interesting how you can recognize, right? When those true entrepreneurs, like they have this sort of spirit of, I know it's going to be something, right? That I'm going to have, and it's going to be independent, and it doesn't die. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I think for me, again, because I was so focused on the path that I had already set for myself that I didn't see the bigness of my skills. I didn't see the bigness of how many options I had until I started taking those professional writing courses. Because initially I was communications with an emphasis in journalism. But when I started taking those journalism courses, I knew that was not the path. And so it was like, I was unsure of where the journey could take me. But once I started taking those different writing courses, I was like, wow, I was really blown away by how much opportunity I could create for myself, even if I didn't want to be a quote unquote freelance writer in the traditional sense.
A door of opportunity just everywhere.
Yeah.
I love it. So talk to me a little bit, Tiffany, just about, because you're a full-time entrepreneur right now.
Yes.
So just talk to me about that juicy moment, that juicy yet scary, yet sometimes exciting, sometimes nerve-wracking, whatever moment of, okay, it's me and I'm on my own to do this thing. Talk to me about that.
So let me preface this conversation with this. I was a habitual job quitter. And this is when that yearning was getting so strong and so strong, but I just never knew what the next best step was. I would get what everybody around me called quote unquote good jobs. Like my first job out of college was a government job, and you don't be quitting no government job. But I knew that it wasn't where I was supposed to be. Just before I was about to get a pay increase that was literally going to keep me there until retirement, I quit because I knew if I got that increase, it would be very hard for me to leave. And I was just miserable. So I was a habitual job hopper, but I had gotten to this point where I was starting to make really good money and I was in a role that was important, but nobody really knew what my role was, but they knew they needed me. So it was like a piece of cake job. I had just gotten a promotion that I did not apply for. And I was like feeling like I was living the dream. if you will. And then I got this very strong instruction from God that, like, on this day, you need to give your notice. And I was like, excuse me, we just got a promotion. We just got a raise. We just bought a house. We need the money to pay the mortgage. All the years that I would just be like, you know what, I'm done here. You know what, I've wrapped up. This is finished for me. But when I got that divine download that it was time, I was like, oh, let's talk about this a little bit. But ultimately, after much prayer and crying and uncertainty and a long conversation with my dad, who always was able to ground me and always supported me, I went ahead and quit the job. Now, leading up to that point, I was doing things on the side. I was teaching classes, workshops. People were inviting me to speak. I wasn't really making any money, but I was building momentum and my name was starting to be circulating. And so I quit. I left my job on May 31st or May 30th. And after I quit, I lost it, Candace. Like I just didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
So my children would go to North Carolina with my father for the summers, and I would have what I call mom gone wild summers. And basically that meant that I could
Sounds
read books all day and all night with no clothes on the couch. But once they left, no one was here. There was no one to say, do this or don't do that. And I was almost like paralyzed by the freedom and the opportunity that I had been praying for. It overwhelmed me that I didn't know what to do. I was telling myself, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And that went on for the most of that summer.
wow.
And then after that, my dad got sick. So he ended up coming to live with me and my children. So I was still trying to do things, but ultimately ended up taking care of my father for the next year, a little more than a year. And then he passed away. And so along this time, I had blogs and I was dipping my toes into different things, but I felt like I knew that what I was doing before I quit wasn't necessarily what I was supposed to do full time, but
Mhm.
I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do because usually when I was in this cycle of quitting, I would quit and then I would say, "Oh, I'll just try this other thing over here. Maybe it'll be better." And then I would quit that and go to another thing, but I knew that wasn't the answer this time. And so it was very challenging for me.
Mhm.
And part of the reason why it was challenging and what I would want to say to someone who's listening who may be in this space or considering the leap to full-time entrepreneurship is that if nothing else, do the next best thing that you know to do, whether that's reading a book, right? If you leave your job every day and you don't have any clients, educate yourself, introduce yourself to someone new every day, get into a routine that's going to nourish you physically and mentally, because those pieces that they don't tell you about your health and caring for yourself and prioritizing yourself in the entrepreneurial journey can make or break you. And I learned that the hard way. I spent so much time at that beginning point beating myself up and berating myself and worrying
Mhm.
that I wasn't taking care of myself. And because my children weren't here, I didn't really have responsibility for anyone else to ground me, if you will. So, yeah, that hopefully I answered your question, but that was kind of my transition. And then once my father passed away and through that grieving process, I really got to the point where I was just like constantly and relentlessly just pursuing God and praying. And that's when I was able to really get the direction. But before, because I was just so in my head and I didn't want anybody to know that I was struggling, it was challenging for me. It was very challenging. And here's the other thing that was hard for me. The Even though I had taken some online courses, I had gotten into some communities, I felt like I was the only one who was struggling. I didn't feel like I had a safe space in those communities to be transparent. And so
Mhm.
I withdrew.
Mhm. And you know what? And when you mention that, because, and I see this all too often, this just syndrome of, okay, I'm the only one that
Mhm.
doesn't have my stuff together. I hear it all the time. I talk to a lot of women, the accelerator, all this stuff. And it's like, what's happening is Generally, they're on social media. And they're seeing all this stuff and they're like, oh, that I used to be connected with way back, or we used to work at whatever, and now they're doing their thing and now I'm left behind, and all this other stuff. And the thing is, it's so easy to just lose focus on what's really important, which is
Yeah.
you in this journey.
That's true. And that's what I learned in hindsight, Candace, because from the time I left my job to the time that my father passed away, it was a little less than 2 years. And what I know now that I didn't realize then is that I was so gung ho and ready to build this thing and make it grow and all of God was giving me the grace not only to spend time with my father in his last days, but before he passed away, he was giving me the grace that summer while my children were away to just get back to position for a while. I had been working really hard. I wanted to buy the house, all of those things. He was giving me grace. But sometimes our perspectives are so skewed and oftentimes by the social media culture that we can't see the gift of delays and detours.
Let me just stop on that point for a second, because that is something that I have learned just in and of myself, learned it so heavily. Like even in the past year, when you talk about the gift of just delay and pause, because I'm a person that will move at full speed. Like you saw me a month ago, we're in a different place a month ago. It just is what it is. But you're so right on about sometimes we don't recognize that some of the halts that happen, even in everyday things,
Yeah,
but that could just very well be God's grace. And especially when you have the perspective, I do, you're a believer, I'm a believer, that all things work together for the good of
absolutely.
those who love him, who are called according to his purpose.
Absolutely.
And so, like, when we think about that and like really have that attitude that, like, no, everything is the way it's supposed to be. Let me just get myself lined up with what's going on. It's not the way I'm perceiving it. I'm just not lined up with the way he's laid it out. Wait a
That's
second.
it right there. Yes, yes.
I mean, let me just, whoo.
But even to get that realization requires us to stop.
Absolutely.
And it's so countercultural.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't stop. You gonna stop. What? What? Yeah. I know better now for sure.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I have to say that to myself a lot because I'm gonna go. But yeah, you're right. You're right. No, I love that. And there were so many different just nuggets in what you just talked about. Because one of the things that I heard in there big time, and I know it happens, I've experienced it myself, is what I call a success trap. When you know you're destined to do something, right, bigger, but you inside of a job and a 9 to 5, right? Where sounds like you were a high achieving woman, right? Promotions just came your way, money wasn't an issue. It's so easy to be comfortable, and people on the outside look and they say, are you crazy?
Hmm. I remember when I told one of my closest friends that I was going to quit, and she was like, "Tiffany, you need to have a seat until you get famous." And I was like, "People don't get famous having a seat." Number one, right? Or number one, this is what God told me to do. Number two, people don't get famous having a seat. It's a very challenging journey, but I learned I that was the beginning of me learning like people have faith until they have to have faith. They have to believe. And so I learned again, that was part of the weak reason why I withdrew because I wasn't able necessarily to find the space where I could just be honest and bear my truth and not feel alienated or judged or people telling me I was crazy because people were always telling me I was crazy.
I believe it. No, I believe it. And trust me, I understand. That's all I had to say. Oh, I love it. So what would you say now, Tiffany? Just thinking about the journey that you've traveled and even your expertise right now and helping folks rebuild their lives and amplify their voices and reclaim their voices. Like when you think about folks that are traveling along the journey, right? What is like the big lessons that you would say, listen, make sure you do this or just avoid this altogether? What would you say?
It's interesting that you mentioned the success trap because I believe that a lot of us unconsciously are bred into it. One of my challenges with this entrepreneurial journey was that I was addicted to achievement.
Mm,
And there aren't always mile markers on the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like when you're growing up and you have these mile markers, it's easy for you to say, this is what I'm aiming for. 2 years for an associate, 4 years for a bachelor's, this long to be considered for a promotion, this long until I get another raise. But when you are on the entrepreneurial journey, everything isn't clear cut that way. One milestone could take 10 years, depending upon your business and all of those things. So, the first thing is that you really have to be willing to unbecome in order to become. You have to be willing to shed some of the expectations that you were living by in the past and set new standards for yourself. Definitely going to tell people to prioritize self care, prioritize their relationship with their spiritual relationship or something that's keeping them grounded. And here's the other thing that I work really hard with. Whether you're trying to reclaim your voice or rebuild your life, you have to build some routines.
mm,
You have to get into a space, even if you're not working full time or you're not in school, you have to build some routines because that's how you develop your non negotiables and learn to set boundaries. If
mhm.
you're not able to do that in the beginning, it's going to be very challenging for you to maintain your power and your voice once you reclaim it because you'll be constantly overcome or I'm sorry, you'll be constantly overcompensating. That's not the word I want. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Overcome promising. That's what I'm saying, right? You'll be overcome promising and you'll be negotiating with people for something that is already yours.
That's that. Okay, I gotta stop right there because that is another just very powerful thing, and especially as you're making that move from employee to entrepreneur,
Mhm.
right? Recognizing that you are shifting out of a world of permission here and can I do this and is this within the rules and is this okay or maybe it's am I dressed the right way, am I presenting the right face, can I get my idea out here, is somebody going to shoot it down, to wait a second, the reality is, and the reality has always been that way,
Yeah,
right? That you own this piece of talent, right? That is within you, right?
yeah,
You own all of that. And even the fact that you are in that 9 to 5, that's a choice that you made. You make all these choices.
yeah,
However, we get so conditioned in that 9 to 5 that, oh no, I gotta follow this, I gotta follow that. And if you carry that attitude into an entrepreneurial world, it's devastating because you're always looking to other people to say, is this right? Is this wrong? And if you're looking to the wrong people, and people who tell you no, sit down, stay a little while longer, or sit down, do this, you will be in this just box and be miserable
yeah.
until you reach a standard that is not what you truly feel inside. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because that's a big one.
And the other thing that I've learned, which is a challenge, right? Because again, when you have that addiction to achievement, when you're constantly looking for accolades or for people to validate you, but really shifting your thought processes and being able to consistently ask yourself, who instead of do, right? Who do I need to become? Not what do I need to be do or what do I need to be do? Who do I need to become? Not what do I need to do? Because if you lead with action without much thought behind it, then you're excuse me, you're going to constantly find yourself in cycles of feeling like you failed. But if you really are willing to do the work to think about who it is you need to become to do the things that you know you are called to do, what God created you to do, then everything shifts a little bit because you will recognize that there's some inner work that is necessary so that you can have the outward expression of success that is rooted in the right things.
Talk about it, girl. Talk about it. Let me tell
But
you.
that's not something you get likes and comments for. And so we have a tendency, or we are conditioned by the culture to skip those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And they're the biggest drivers. You're right on. This whole conversation is just blessing my soul. Let me just.
It's like things you already know, but things you have to consistently remind yourself of and keep at the forefront of your mind so that you don't fall back into that hustle mentality.
And that's a thing too. When you talk about that constant reminder, it is so important. And I think it's valuable to just say this right now for those that may be listening and who are, traveling that path. Certain things don't stop. Like you don't stop it, at least for me, you don't stop getting nervous about certain things. You don't stop having fear about certain things. You don't stop needing to constantly work on your mental state and where it needs to be. These things don't stop. There is no magic. Maybe this gets back to the achievement. There is no magic. Okay, at milestone marker number 235, I'm going to be good and like never have to worry about. No. You continue the work to continue the journey.
That's right. That's right. And that's that part right there that you said is the journey that's most important. That's why you have to focus on, you can be married to the destination, but not the journey. Because the journey is going to change. It's going to take different shapes. It's going to have twists and turns. And if you're married to what the journey looks like, then it's going to be very challenging for you to get to your destination. Very challenging because you might think you getting ready to be in a sports car when you're going to have to get in the paddle boat
before you get to that road.
And that is work, right? There's nothing glamorous about a paddle boat at all.
Mm-hmm. You will build some muscle though.
That part. And also, if you're not rushing, you might find some peace as you cross that body of water. But you have to have the right perspective. If you spend the whole time that you are paddling thinking, I should be in a sports car, I wanted that car, I deserve that car, you'll be miserable.
Absolutely. You are on point with that. You're on point with that. No, I love it. There is, so for everybody who is listening or watching, first off, I'm gonna tell you this. If you haven't been taking notes this entire time, you're gonna go ahead and rewind. Either go back, listen back, watch back, however you're watching it, rewind. Because what we're talking about here are very serious things, right? They're beyond that outer world. Is the things that help you have that staying power and that growth that you truly desire. So get this and soak it in. And Tiffany, I got to tell you, I have, like I said, you have blessed my soul this conversation. It's good to have conversations like this in the morning to help set the tone.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up here, tell us, if people are listening and they just want to hear more from you or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
They can connect with me on all the places in these internet streets at the Tiffany Huff. And also they can listen to the podcast, which is the Bounce Back Blueprint podcast. Wherever they're listening to this podcast, it's likely there. And I can give you my email address to put in the show notes if you like. My website is tiffanyhuffexperience.com.
Awesome. And we're going to make sure that we have all of Tiffany's contact info inside of the show notes at CandaceSpears.com. So don't worry if you missed it. You can go over there and grab it and get in touch. Tiffany, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure. And for as much as it has blessed you, it has also blessed me. And I hope that someone else is blessed by our conversation as well. Thank you again.
Sure thing. I love it. Those of you that are listening, you know what I always say, don't just take this and hold on to it. Take it and take some action with it. So hope you have a great day, a great evening, whenever you're listening or watching, and we'll talk to you again very soon.